So let's get started. I'm Ann Hauptman. I'm the president of Earlham College and professor of biology. I don't know if I don't usually put that on anything, but I'm very proud that the biology department offered me a full professor when I came. There are a lot of great questions. Today we have both alumni and parents at the same Hearthside chat. So got lots of great questions and a wide range of questions. So I'm going to try to stay on track and keep going. I also have my phone with me for dial a friend or whatever it's called, and the cabinet knows to text me if I got something wrong or if I need to say a little bit more about something. All right, let's see. Let's start off with questions about our goals and status. What is Earlham's status now, enrollment, et cetera, and what are our goals for the future? So let me start with the second one first. I have two main priorities for the year that the cabinet shares, and that is, first of all, increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion at Earlham. And the second top priority is creating a financially sustainable path forward for the college. I don't feel that we can be successful as a college if we aren't able to meet both of those goals. So that is, we're laser focused on those two this year. And the other part of the question was about enrollment. For us to be financially sustainable, we really need to grow enrollment. Right now, current enrollment is about 750. Last year it was 900 and something, but we had a decline in enrollment numbers this semester due to COVID, like many other colleges and universities. We really need to be closer to something between 1,200 and 1,500 based on our infrastructure and also on the economies of scale that we need to be able to continue to offer a first-in-class education. So that's the aim. And I'll talk more about recruitment and enrollment later. So let's turn to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the specific question someone asked, that's a great question, is how is the college dealing with systemic racism and supporting its students and employees of color? So as I said, this is one of my top two priorities for the year. The board, incidentally, I think it's important to say, recognizes how critically important this is for Earlham's future and the future of the world. And so they've had a working group on diversity, equity, and inclusion for several years. They have now made that working group a full committee of the board, and the chair of that committee sits on the executive committee of the board. So that is a major statement. Also, the chair of the board, Ray Onko, told me that when he was composing committees this year, there was so much interest in serving on the DEI committee that he had to just assign them to other things like audit or academic affairs because there were just too many people. Once a committee gets too large, you really can't accomplish anything. I think they've actually done studies of this, and it's more than 7 people on a committee. You get decreasing productivity. I have on campus charged the College Life and Community Committee, I think that's right, is CLAC, with leading the community in revisiting our principles and practices with a special emphasis on how they relate to diversity and equity. So our principle and practices, most of you know, are our foundational values and belief statements that all other activities, committee work follow from. So it's supposed to be reviewed every 4 years. It's been about 6 years now, I think, and I did think we needed to revisit it, especially in light of diversity and equity. The other thing that we've done to move forward on addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion at Earlham is that I charged our Diversity Progress Committee, that's called the DPC, I asked them to create and present a diversity, equity, and inclusion action plan by February 1st. So everyone's working really hard to get that to happen. Obviously, they're not writing a diversity action plan all by themselves. They're engaging with the campus community to make sure to be inclusive in how we think about that. I am very excited about the conversations that both of these committees will be leading over the coming days and weeks. And of course, it's always a moving target. We really have to work hard on this always and be committed to it. Oh, and the other part is that I specifically asked that we could create a dashboard of indicators, kind of like we have a COVID-19 dashboard, and I think it's a nice way for people to check in and say, well, how are we doing? I also think some people just want to know, so how many students of color do we have right now? And what's our goal? And then how well are we doing moving toward that goal? So diversifying the faculty would be something that would be on that dashboard. Another one that I think is critically important is eliminating what we call achievement gaps across historically underrepresented groups on campus. So we want to make sure those students are as successful as every other student at Earlham. So that's some of the activity. I love to hear from you about other ideas you have, but know that it's an absolute top priority, top of mind for all of us. The next question is about the Bonner program. And the question was, why was the Bonner program ended? So, and there's been some miscommunications around this and misunderstandings on social media. So I think it's really important to clarify. So first of all, for those of you who aren't aware, the Bonner program, the Bonner Scholars Program, is a scholarship program for high needs students who commit to significant service in exchange for a full scholarship from Earlham. And let me step back and talk about that. It costs us right around $60,000 per student per year to offer an Earlham education. So that includes, our teaching faculty, our administrative faculty, and staff who provide all of that background support, housing, dining services, all the other ways that we support our students, athletics. So $60,000 a year. Our total price tag that we advertise is just under this amount. And we're working to align those two so that we can be absolutely transparent about what we're asking for. Now, no student pays that full amount. Everyone has some kind of scholarship or award. So out of that $60,000, Bonner has paid $2,500 a year per student for this. That's increased to $3,000 a year just this past year. So the other $57,000, some Bonner scholars actually, I think, pay for their room and board. So say another $40,000, Earlham paid for that. So of these Bonner scholars, 15 students a year were awarded this scholarship for a total of 60 Earlham students at a time. That varies between institutions. Their eligibility was determined by the Bonner Foundation and was dependent on the student's financial status. And students were required to complete 10 hours of service per week. Some of that off campus, which was a little bit of a challenge for us sometimes administratively. And that's during the academic year. And then they also had to complete 2 years of service during the summer. So in June, I received a request, sorry, I want to just make sure I get this right. I've lost my spot. We received a request from Bobby Hackett at the Bonner Foundation to return, the request was to return the endowment that we've managed here at Earlham on their behalf since 2008. Although I saw something else that said it was since 2011. So maybe the initial agreement was 2008 and it wasn't fully here until 2011. Anyway, so after I received that letter, which was a surprise, 1 second. This is thirsty work. So when I spoke with Bobby Hackett, who's the president of the Bonner Foundation, he said that the Bonner Foundation board was concerned about the financial stability of colleges given COVID and other challenges, and that we could revert to the Bonner program we had had previously before we held their endowment, or we could consider other options. Now, Bobby told me in that conversation that he wasn't just reaching out to Earlham. They had more general concerns and in fact spoke at some length about a college with ties to Earlham and their challenges. So what I thought he meant was that the Bonner Foundation had made this request to all institutions with the Bonner endowment. But I've since learned that that is not true because it's not typically when you work with foundations, they do not like to take their endowment and give it to someone else for an endowment. They like keeping their endowment close to home because then they can make the investment decisions and track it and change how they're allocating based on that. So this request was Bobby, and I've spoken since then, or emailed exchange since then, and we'll be speaking soon. This request that was made to Earlham was made to 6 institutions with Bonner endowments. And of those 6 institutions, 2 of us have chosen to launch our own community service programs afterward. And I'll say more about that in a minute, but I want to be clear that no matter how we chose to move forward, Bobby and I were in agreement from the beginning that current Bonner scholars would continue to receive the same financial and academic support they received in the past until they graduate, both from Bonner and from Earlham. So when I received this email from Bobby and this request, I asked a group of the subgroup of the cabinet to bring forward a proposal for how to proceed, because I'll talk more about it in a minute, but Earlham, we've identified several kind of community service and growing our roots in Richmond initiatives. And so I said, let's take this opportunity to think broadly about how we want community service to go forward at Earlham. In particular, I'd like to see it community service opportunities offered to a broader range of the Earlham community. So that group came back to the cabinet and they recommended that, of course, we comply with Bonner's request to return the endowment. That would be weird to deny that request, which is about $7.44 million. And a side benefit of returning that money. Actually, let me step back and tell you that $7,440,000 right around throws off just under $300,000 a year. And that's about evenly split between those student scholarships and then some of the administrative support that is needed to run the Bonner program. When we return that $7.44 million, which the board has just approved doing, that releases about $3.2 million of our own endowment, some of which Bonner required as a match when we were given the endowment in the first place. And there were other funds that we set aside for the administrative costs of the program. And then that committee also recommended, most importantly, that rather than returning to the old Bonner model we had had prior to 2008 or any other Bonner model, that we create ourselves a new Earlham Community Service Program. And the main argument for that, and I can go into more detail if we have time, but the main argument is that by decoupling the community service requirements from the high student need requirements, we felt that we could more easily do two things. One is continue our commitment to high needs students, and we could reach more Earlham students regardless of their economic status, who care deeply about community service. I have to tell you, I've been a part of this community for close to a year and a half now, and it seems that most Earlham students and alumni care deeply about community service. So I was very excited to see an Earlham Community Service Initiative that would offer service opportunities to all of those students interested in that. I'll also say that this community service initiative aligns beautifully with several initiatives that we've kicked off this year. First, our marketing campaign For Good that is focused on this unique Earlhamite attribute of trying to make the world a better place, no matter what it is your path in life is. Also, we have a Lilly-funded initiative called Growing Where You're Planted, Deepening Our Roots in Richmond and Wayne County. So that was $1 million. I think you heard me talk about it. Really incredible. And also our very exciting new regional recruiting initiative that was supported by a generous gift from Alan and Peg Scantlin, class of 1974. And we've thanked them several times for that. I am very excited to see how that comes out. So all of these things will deepen our roots in Richmond and Wayne County, and then of course in the broader Midwest. And we think that's a very positive thing for Earlham going forward. Bobby Hackett at Bonner has assured me that he's committed to supporting Earlham as we transition to this model. We have learned so much from our partnership with Bonner and are so grateful for their support as of so many Earlham Bonner scholars. So we feel like we're really ready for a next step. We're very excited by it, but we continue to be grateful and consider that we will continue being good partners with Bonner and Bobby Hackett as we move through this. Let's see. Let's turn to something that we can seldom turn away from, COVID-19. So there were several questions related to how the college is handling COVID. So, and for those of you who are curious, all of our protocols, current events, daily dashboard related to COVID can be found on our website at earlham.edu/coronavirus. So that's updated daily, and feel free to check on that. So let me tell you a little bit. We've actually been very successful in controlling the virus at Earlham this semester. To be honest, more successful than I expected we could be, and more successful than any other college whose president I've spoken to. During our 3 rounds of mandatory testing, remember we had a round before students came to campus that included all employees, and then one 2 weeks later, and now we had one just after the split between the first and second fall term. During all of those rounds, we only had, let's see, so the first one before people got to campus, 4 students tested positive. The second round, that was after they'd arrived on campus, 3 students tested positive. And then this last round, only 2 students tested positive. One of those students is a student at Earlham School of Religion. The most students we've had in quarantine have been 20 at a time. That was just one time. Boy, that was brutal. But more typically, we have only 1 to 4 in quarantine at a time. So what's interesting, also, I think about this, I want to mention is that we only had 2 cases when there was transmission on campus. One case, everything else came from outside into Earlham. So that makes me feel really good about how we're doing things on campus. One was a set of roommates, and I just don't think there's any way to ensure that a roommate would not catch COVID from another roommate. Another time was 3 very close friends on the same athletic team. Other than that, everything's just come onto campus, and then we've identified it and put out the fire. This last set of tests, we did have 6 employees test positive, which was significantly higher than anything we've seen before, and it seems to correlate with an increase in Wayne County cases. Only one of those employees, several of the employees were working completely remotely. One employee had 10 close contacts. So that was challenging. Remember, a close contact is someone's within 6 feet of you for more than 15 minutes. And in total, speaking of contact tracing, that our team has followed only 18 cases this semester. That's faculty, staff, students, and several of those were employees who were working remotely. Also, we've had no hospitalizations of anyone, so there has not been a severe case here. And this is due, I have to say, to every single person, including our amazing students' commitment to safeguarding the entire campus community. I hear hair curling stories from other campuses. We don't have those happening here. For example, our student athletes had started to scrimmage. Then there was this one case where 3 of them on a team became ill. They decided to step back practices, to be in smaller groups and no direct scrimmages, because they didn't want to be the reason the campus shut down. I'm just so impressed with them. Somebody asked about what protocols and precautions we have in place. Basically, masks are required indoors unless you're in your very own private space, and if you're outdoors in close proximity to others. We're also asking for social distancing at 6 foot and masks in enclosed spaces. So because of that, most meetings are conducted via Zoom. We did have one cabinet retreat where we were all together, but it was kind of weird. We were all spread out. So we're sticking with Zoom for now. We've had this regular testing, as I mentioned before. The last set of testing was October 2nd through October 9th. We're still doing daily assessments. Students and employees receive an email or push notification every morning reminding them to complete an assessment of symptoms. Not as many people are filling those out as I would like, but we'll keep doing it. Everyone is required to have a flu shot by October 31st. We're only on October 22nd, and we're over 80%. So very pleased with that. In terms of travel, we've asked students not to leave Wayne County during the semester, and any employees who travel outside of their normal routine are asked to quarantine before returning to campus. But we have absolutely minimized travel. We're also doing this wastewater monitoring. I mentioned this on one of my Friday updates. Richmond Sanitation Department has been conducting assessments of places all around town to to be an early indicator of the presence of COVID. So far, we have very low rates. We did have a spike right before we found a couple of students ill, so it's working well. So last thing about this, someone asked, what are we advising students about sex? And then they said, be specific. So specifically, we are not advising students about whether or not to have sex or about how to have sex if they choose to have sex. We're not doing that. I suppose, the masks and 6 feet, social distancing would imply things about what we're saying about sex, but our students are adults and that is not something we've chosen to weigh in on. But again, so far, almost no transmission on campus. So that's great news. Other support and counseling, we're provided additional hours with counseling services. HR is working with employees about remote work as needed. And we've turned as many campus events as possible into being virtual. Someone asked if we're testing students before they go home for winter break. No, we're not. Remember, we have extremely low rates of infection on campus. If you're concerned about your student coming home without being tested, there is free testing available off campus if you want them to test before leaving. They should probably be test or quarantined when they get home, regardless, because of course, travel is probably when they're more exposed than they are right now on campus. Spring semester plan, someone asked about that. We are planning for an in-person semester with all our fingers and toes crossed, but of course we'll remain flexible as the pandemic unfolds over the winter. We are seeing spikes across the Midwest and across the country, so we'll continue to evaluate. This is really just a moment by moment thing. When it's time to reopen, about the the final week in January, we will need to make a decision closer to that time. But so far, I mean, everyone's been great, so I'm really hoping we can continue. Okay, next thing, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? Okay. What is the college's financial outlook, particularly given the impact of COVID-19? Yeah, that didn't help us, did it? This is, as I mentioned, one of 2 top priorities for the year. And I'm just getting rah-rah notes from my call of friends there. So thank you. Let's see. So creating a sustainably financial path forward for the college. And Earlham's been operating with a budget deficit prior to COVID, really that kicked off in about 2009. And like most colleges and universities, COVID has had a further negative impact on our financial status, both because we had fewer students enroll, and we saw that enrollments across the country are down 16% in first-year students. And a lot of students continue to enroll, but are staying home, and our room and board revenues also help us balance our budget. So we moved into being a little more of a commuter school than we're used to, and that changes both the dynamics on campus and our financials. I came up with a comparison or an analogy for this, for the financial situation we're in, because on the one hand, I'm saying we have a broken business model and we have to fix it, and we have to fix it now. And on the other hand, I'm saying, don't worry. We are aiming not to cut any more positions. We think we're in good shape going forward. So here's my analogy. Let me know what you think of it. it's like in 2009 when things got weird with the country in general. A lot of businesses went under. It was like we moved to driving on the wrong side of the road, right? Here in the United States, we drive on the right side of the road. So we started driving on the left side of the road. We were driving there and we were saying, we need to get on the right side of the road. But we didn't. We just kept driving on the left side of the road. So here we are, and we're running out of the excess endowment we have that we can spend in whatever way we want. And so it's kind of like there's a truck coming at us, right? And they're in the right lane for them, but we're in the left lane. So it's coming right at us. And so the response could be, oh no, we're going to die. Or the response could be, well, now we really have to get in the right lane. And that's what we have to do. We have to fix our business model. We have to do it quickly. We don't want to get hit by a truck. And that is what we're focusing on now. That's why it's my top priority. So that's the situation we're in. We're doing a whole bunch of things to balance things out. Let me tell you about a couple of them. I may have mentioned them before. Our faculty are working on articulation agreements for 6 different programs with Ivy Tech. That's a really exciting possibility for us. Ivy Tech is our local community college, and more students have moved to going to community college at the start of their college career. In particular, first-gen students, students of color, students from lower socioeconomic status. These are people that we want to offer an Earlham education to. So very excited about that articulation agreement. We're also started offering summer online courses last summer that really filled up. And this year we'll be opening up those courses to more than just current Earlham students. Very excited about that. The faculty have approved and now are offering several new majors, which we're already seeing significant interest from this year's, the students who are now applying to Earlham, chief among them exercise science. I think we're close to 100 students saying that that's what they want to major in. Other ones are data science, social services, media and communications studies. And yesterday, the faculty approved a creative writing major. Very excited about that. So the faculty are working very hard to make this true. We've also needed, you can't just keep adding majors and not transition majors. You know, there's a lifespan to programs and majors that we in academic affairs are not great at recognizing. So we are, faculty have voted to lay down HDSR, which is a really beloved major, was now found in the social services major that more closely aligns with today's student interest and faculty interest. And then the faculty will be discussing laying down German, which has had very few majors for more than a decade. And I'll talk more about that in a minute because people had specific questions about German. The other things going on, the board just approved the sale of farmland south of Abingdon Pike Road. That was a very painful discussion and decision because that farmland has been part of Earlham for some time. We still, though, have more than 50 acres of farmland that's contiguous to us, so north of Abingdon Pike Road, that we've been discussing for a solar array. We're also, and then I will just say the sale of that farmland would not have happened except that we're in, this financial situation where the truck's coming. So we need to move to the right side of the road. We're also exploring a retail establishment on 40 and College Avenue. We are really hoping that will will students' perception of the college town that is Richmond. We keep showing up as like worst in the country for college towns. I just like, how about Flint, Michigan is what I think of. when I see that. But I think things like having access to coffee or donuts or pizza close right there next to campus will have a big impact. And then the other one, of course, the board approved at this last meeting, the return of the Bonner Endowment. I've also got a new group going, a faculty group called I'm calling them the Sandbox Group. This is some of our most creative faculty, and I've asked them to generate and develop some strategies for increasing revenue by looking more broadly at what an Earlham student is and when we offer Earlham learning opportunities. So they're getting lots of great ideas, by the way, from alumni, from parents, from a lot of the community. And they're now working on developing business plans for those, and then the community will look more closely at those. And of course, recruitment and growing our enrollment is another piece of this puzzle that I mentioned before. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. And first, I'll have a sip of ice water. This is a long time to talk without stopping. Okay, how is Earlham dealing with enrollment challenges? So our goal for next year's incoming class is to enroll 285 first-year students, which helps us align with our goal for growth to the college. That was our goal last year, and we were absolutely on track for it. And then everything completely froze in mid-March, and we just got no more students coming in. So this year, we're back at it. I mentioned the gift from the Scantlins that's going to help us fund some recruitment initiatives. And they are hiring additional staff members to implement those initiatives. I'm very excited about them. I wish I had more time to talk to you about it, but I think it's just really fantastic. Some of the things we're doing, though, so the focus of the regional recruiting grant is to recruit more heavily within a 150-mile radius of campus. So that includes all of Indiana, and it doesn't look like a circle. It looks really like an amoeba. So Indiana, Dayton, Cincinnati, and Columbus in Ohio, Detroit and Ann Arbor in Michigan, Chicagoland, Lexington and Louisville in Kentucky. And we're also focusing on specific schools that they align well with Earlham, and we expect they could be, what you call feeder schools. We are revamping our financial aid offer structure, and that includes a Heartland Scholarship for those in the 150-mile radius. See, I thought we were going to do Hoosier and Buckeye scholarships, but I guess Heartland Scholarship makes a lot more sense. We are, we're rolling out our new brand, as I mentioned earlier, For Good, that I'm just so excited about. I feel like it aligns so well with Earlham's Quaker values and our ongoing commitment to our principles and practices. I think I've said to you guys before, it is the defining characteristic of Earlhamites when I meet them, how they're trying to make the world a better place. So that was launched in July and is being included in all of our communications. We are also about to launch a new website. Very, very excited to see that. That'll happen within the next month. We're doing a lot more modern marketing efforts than we did in the past. And we are aligning Earlham School of Religion and our graduate programs in education with our undergraduate marketing approaches. So I'm excited about that. We're also doing a better job communicating and marketing our exciting EPIC programs. Another thing that's been happening, and thanks to all of you, alumni have been working with admissions and advancement, marketing and communication to help engage more students, recruit more students. That is a big deal. Actually, on our website, there's a place about alum recruiting. It's called earlham.edu/alum recruiting. So, and as I mentioned, we are offering these new majors that seem to be being grabbed up. We also have 2 new minors, one in quality science and one in equestrian management. So far this year, it's too early in the year to tell if we're going to spike. That shows up in, I think, mid-December. We start seeing how we're going to do. Our visits to date are up 54% in comparison to this time last year. So that's exciting. And our total admits are up 30%, maintaining the same academic quality. And the reason is that we have started turning over applications within, I think it's 72 hours, rather than sometimes they would sit for weeks when I first got here. My son's sat for, I think, 6 weeks before it was responded to when he applied. Okay, let's move to why is German no longer being offered at Earlham? So we recently celebrated the retirement of Margaret Hampton, who taught German on campus for 40 years. Margaret is just this extraordinary person who not only contributed to the German program, but in the humanities program, Earlham seminar, cross-listed with other programs. She's just an amazing person. And she designed our off-campus program in Berlin. She was, on a personal note, incredibly welcoming to me. I am going to miss her, and I know everybody is too, and her incredible commitment to Earlham. So she was the only German professor, and with her retirement, and on top of that, very small number of students pursuing German as a course of study, and honestly, the last 10 years, I've looked at those data, we aren't at this point able to offer a German program on campus. However, the faculty are the ones that need to decide whether we officially lay down that program. We expect that, but we're waiting on that. We do have one German major on campus right now. We are continuing to support this student and other current students with an interest in languages not being offered at Earlham. We're working on something through the GLCA, the Greater Lakes College Association, which is colleges like us. I think there's 12 or so of them, includes Oberlin and Kenyon and a few others. So we'll be offering those remotely. And the students should talk to their academic advisors about the options they have, because I don't know all of them. Here's another question about the spring semester. And how am I doing on time? Looks like I'm doing okay. Spring semester is going to look just like fall semester, and hopefully it will be in person. And in between them, I don't know if everyone knows, but we're having a January online term where students can take one class, but it will be online. The commencement weekend is being planned for May 21st and 22nd. Oh, I hope so much that we're able to do that in person. But I think we're just going to have to remain flexible to see how we're able to move forward. A big part of it is, when will a vaccine be available, and how widely will that vaccine be available? So lots of hopes for that. So question about student housing needs. I'm not sure I can answer all of these. Let me just go through this. How is the campus handling student housing needs and keeping people engaged during COVID? Yeah, that's a tough one. Student life and other parts of campus, athletics certainly have done a great job of transitioning events into virtual environments whenever possible, or adding at least components that are virtual. It is not the same. There's no way to pretend it is, but we are learning how to engage with one another while staying safe. Housing, over break, I think there was a question about that. Students will apply to stay on campus over break, and there will be a charge. We are hoping to minimize that number, since we'll have to move everyone to one dormitory, both for security and so that we can turn down the heat in other buildings and so forth, because otherwise heating the whole campus while almost no one's here is just not well, it's not financially responsible. It's not also not environmentally responsible. So what's happening with EPIC experiences? That's a big one for people. Travel, EPIC experiences, travel, off-campus study. So we are not allowing college-sponsored travel this year because of COVID. And we've also then, because of that, had to change some of the expectations about how EPIC Advantage experience happens, such as allowing for virtual experiences. Our career coaches in the Center for Global and Career Education are amazing. And I would like to see our students spend more time talking to them about what their options are for EPIC Advantage. Off-campus study also is not happening this year due to the pandemic. I know this is really hard on some of our students. I mean, it's incredibly disappointing. And I don't get to travel and see alumni, which was just a very wonderful part of my first 6 months as president, but I'm counting on those happening soon. Safety, just to remind you, is our #1 priority for our students, faculty, and staff. So safety first, health and safety. And then those other things happen when we're under more control of things. What is Earlham's response to the proposed rule change on how student visas are renewed? Great question. ICE is currently proposing a rule change that, if it takes effect in its current form, would drastically alter our ability to recruit new international students and support our current students. They're creating limitations and red tape that will limit the amount of time students are able to remain in the United States on an F1 visa. So obviously we are very much against this. We are arguing against it and are in general disturbed by the new directions that ICE continues to take to keep some of the best students we see in this country, to keep them out of the country. So we are very much against that. We are, Candace Marshall on campus has pulled together a group asking for comments, and really appreciate that work. Engagement with the college. How can the college improve relations with its constituents? Let me talk about parents first, because I know there's a big group of parents there. Our marketing team and our admissions team have really revamped parent communications this year, both for prospective students and admitted students. And next, they are working on communication flow for parents of current students. We are really thinking broadly about how we interact with parents, and so we are open to your feedback. We get great ideas from people all the time that we wouldn't have thought of ourselves. In relations with our local community, you know, we have a long history of community engagement with the city. Our mayor is a big supporter. Our students share their talents and passion for service with dozens of community organizations. So, for example, our environmental sustainability seniors have, in recent years, pursued a number of community improvement projects, designing playground projects at parks, and helping lead the development of a climate plan for the city. I want to bring up something that I can't remember if it was a question, but I want to talk about it. And that is about, I only have 10 minutes, so I'll talk about it quickly. What happened at the BLM protest in Richmond that led to charges against Earlham students? So on September 5th, some of our students joined the Richmond community in a third Black Lives Matter protest. And toward the end of the march, they were crossing a street, the light went red, and I think a couple of students were helping people move across. a driver was frustrated by waiting for this in an SUV. He revved his engine several times, and then he drove through the protesters. Two of those protesters were hit by the car, our students, both. Luckily, they were only had minor scrapes and bruises. So five of the participants stayed there to talk to police and told them what happened. And those 5 students were later charged with Class B misdemeanors for obstructing traffic. The owner of the SUV was cited for Class A and Class B misdemeanors for leaving the scene of an accident. So this is obviously very upsetting to everyone in the community. I have tried not to make public statements so far because I was hoping to work more behind the scenes to see how we could resolve this, but that has so far not borne any fruit. So I just want you to know that I expect I'll be making a public statement sometime soon about that. I think there are so many pieces of this that are just a microcosm of what has happened in our country in terms of a false equivalence, like this false equivalence between these misdemeanor charges are exactly what George Floyd faced when he possibly tried to pass a fake $20 bill and then was suffocated to death, or Breonna Taylor, who had an ex-drug dealer boyfriend, so she was shot dead in her own home. That's just unacceptable, and it has to change in our country. Let me just skip down to the last thing, because we only have a few minutes. How is Anne holding up and managing the stress of these times? Thank you so much for asking that. I can't imagine, I don't think anyone anywhere has ever asked me that question. It has been a heck of a year, I will tell you. I had no idea, I could not imagine how hard this would be this year, or how tired we would all be and just have to keep going, because you have to keep going when you have students here, right? I also could not have imagined how deeply I would grow to love and care for the Earlham community. Every single one of you is such an extraordinary person. I am humbled and just beyond honored that I was invited to be a member of this community. And I hope you know that I am doing my very best, as is all of the people who work with me, to ensure not only the safety of our students, but maintain the strength of our community. And even though we're tired, we have to keep going, right? Because it's so clear to me that the world needs Earlham, and it needs Earlhamites now more than it ever has, when you look at what's going on around us. And that keeps me going. I want to thank you for your care and concern for me and for Earlham, and all the many, many ways that you support us. I really appreciate it more than you know.